Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I hope everyone has had a great week out there so far as it comes to an end and we're about to kickstart our weekend. I don't know about you guys, but I'm certainly excited about this weekend specifically. As I mentioned in last night's video, I always thought that this weekend, Labor Day weekend, is like the gateway to the best time of the year. So I'm certainly excited. Hope you guys got some cool plans planned over the next few days. But here to talk about the weather, we're going to try to break down what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Friday to kickstart that weekend. But right here at the beginning, we're going to give you some update information on the tropics. We're going to go over all the latest model guidance that we have on this area of interest. It's certainly piqued some interest out there in the weather community, especially if you live in the Caribbean, the Gulf states, the Southeast, of course, where I would say well into peak hurricane season. The technical peak time frame is around the second week of September. But typically this time of the year, we're tracking something, or at least have an area that we're watching. And this year is no different, so we're going to speak on it, break down the Euro, GFS, Canadian Icon model, its ensemble guidance. We'll talk about sea surface temperatures, the upper wind patterns, some steering currents. And then, of course, I got you covered on what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48. So everything will be time-stamped out. Take advantage of that if you just want to skip ahead to certain portions of the video. Don't blame you one bit. I understand my videos are pretty long and not everybody has 30, 45 minutes to listen to a guy yap about the weather. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is the Atlantic. What area are we watching the most? As you see kind of areas of colors on your screen, you got this one right here, which looks like some explosion of something. You got this area in the Gulf of Mexico, this area off the coast of the mid-Atlantic, this area here, and this tropical wave here also. So this is the area we are watching right here in the central Atlantic. And it doesn't look very organized, and it's not. It's not consolidated into a tropical depression, cyclone, tropical storm. The next name is Francine, and we don't have that right now. But the circled area that I just drew here, that is the area of interest, the area we are watching. Now, I am watching, the National Hurricane Center has not circled this, but I'm sure they got their eyes on it. They are the experts for a reason. It's their job. I am watching, though, this area, too, tucked into the northwest corner of the Gulf of Mexico. This has a mid-level spin to it. It continues to bring a lot of rain, shower, and storm activity to areas of the Texas coastline and a good chunk of southern Louisiana, and will pretty much over most of the weekend. And we'll speak on that in portions of this video. So we got that too. We're not really worried about this developing into anything, but we do have this energy back here also that we'll kind of chatter about a little bit in the video, also in the tropics update portion of this video. But this is the main topic here. We're going to watch this, see if it comes together, and then has an opportunity to maybe develop once it gets somewhere into the Caribbean, I would say. Now, it does have a shot to develop before that, but I would say earliest, in my opinion, is going to develop somewhere in this area. When I say develop, what does that mean? Well, into a depression or a named storm. So we get this all off your screen, and we continue to rumble through this update, and this is the latest information from the National Hurricane Center per around the 1 a.m. Eastern Time update. So now we have two areas of interest, right? We have this one in yellow that you see and one in orange. The one in orange, which is this one, is the main one we are watching. It has a 50% chance to develop into a depression or named storm, basically a tropical cyclone, sometime in the next 7 days. In this entire orange area right here, where that X is, that orange X, that is around where this system is right now, sort of the origins of it that they think is going to originate from. So could develop sometime in this orange area sometime in the next 7 days. I would bet it's going to develop sort of on the far western edge right into here of this orange area into the Caribbean after it passes over the Lesser Antilles. But folks, it could develop sooner than that. If you go back and you look at the satellite, to be honest with you, it doesn't look organized, but you're seeing a lot more shower and storm activity compared to last night in this area this morning. So we got that, and we'll kind of jump back to this. Let's see. And now we have this area to watch too. There's a tropical wave right where that yellow X is, and it has a 20% chance sometime in the next 7 days to develop into a depression or a named storm in this yellow area right here. And model guidance has upticked on this overnight. A lot of model guidance has this turning pretty far north, maybe going out to sea, but we still need to watch it. So in general, you kind of look at everything again. I mean, it's getting pretty active. We don't have a named storm out there. We don't have a depression. We certainly don't have a hurricane, but we have areas to watch. So let's go over the latest European model. Now, I will say, once we get to the GFS model, the 06Z run is still running. Hopefully I get enough of it to show you the latest information, but I'm having to do this video a little bit earlier this morning because on Friday mornings I mentor a kid at our elementary school, and I have to get there like right when they open the doors. So just have to get these videos out a little bit earlier on Fridays. And of course, you know, some of these morning model runs have not got finished running. So let's look at the latest Euro. We definitely have the whole entire run with this. What are we showing? Well, we'll start this off for Monday evening, Labor Day evening. Okay, so September the 2nd. And you're not really seeing anything. You're seeing blobs of green here, up here, and down here. But really, I want you to keep your eyes sort of in this area right here. I know it's just one little blob of green with a little smidget of yellow in it. But that is our tropical disturbance, wave, whatever you want to call it, right? At this point, by Labor Day, it has not developed into a depression, like a system that we would dub as tropical cyclone, which has a defined low-level circulation. So at this point, the Euro says no, we don't have that yet. Now, just kind of keep your eyes down here in the Caribbean, okay? You're not going to see really much of anything. You're just going to see blobs of green. Just indicates tropical activity, shower and storm action, right? And this kind of unorganized mess sort of very slowly just drifts through the entire Caribbean. And by the time we're about 6 days from now, you know, next Thursday evening, September the 5th, this is still just drifting through the Caribbean. Eventually, it gets to the Western Caribbean. So at this point, if you don't know where we're at here, it's right here. Okay? That is where our tropical disturbance is in what we call the Western Caribbean. So get this back off and we keep going. It doesn't develop anytime between now and the next week. It basically just slowly drifts across the Caribbean. Doesn't develop. It doesn't. And we're going to talk about maybe why here in a second and why it could go the other way and really get going. But you keep this going, and eventually it finally gets its act together next weekend. Not this weekend, next weekend. And you see how that millibar right here begins to drop. That tells us we have a strengthening storm system. And it does exactly what I said I didn't think it was going to do in last night's video. And it cruises right into Central America and areas of the like Belize and the Yucatan Peninsula as kind of a weak tropical storm. So, like, not this weekend, but like the tail end of next weekend. And then, I mean, this is 10 days out. This is day 1 through 10. It takes like 10 days to get all the way here. All right, so that's the latest Euro. Now, I know that's kind of hard to see on your screen because, you know, it's so weak. But another really good way to look at this is energy in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. So if you kind of keep your eyes right here at this little mid-level spin here, and you keep this going, and it latches onto a one kind of energy behind it. That's the thing, is we got to figure out what becomes the dominant piece of energy, the dominant vortice, just the dominant energy in the atmosphere. Once one kind of consolidates, then, you know, things can improve, and we could potentially have a tropical cyclone developing. So the energy's right here, right? I mean, we're not losing the energy. I mean, it's there. See, you see that kind of area in yellow, orange, red kind of cruising across the Caribbean here. And it looks like it kind of tightens up and actually becomes kind of broad, but then it tightens up again in the Western Caribbean. And then it develops at the last second before cruising into Central America. So that's the Euro. What about the GFS? And we only have 162 hours of the GFS. So we might have to flip it to the OOZ. And what I'll try to do is I'll try to go back to it and see how much more of the run that we got. The latest GFS will start it, same thing, Labor Day evening, this coming Monday. And once again, I will circle where we're watching here. This area right into here somewhere, which doesn't look any different than this area or this area. I know. It's kind of tough to focus your eyes on, but this is the tropical disturbance we are watching in that first circled area that I drew. So you keep this going, right? Still nothing developing. The energy's there. Nothing really there Wednesday morning. Thursday morning, well, that's around Thursday midday, September the 5th, you're starting to see some darker greens, yellows, even some reds and oranges in there. And then the last frame, which is unfortunately as far as we got, it looks like it begins to develop something in the central Caribbean. 1,005 millibar low, south of Jamaica. And we might can flip it to, I had this pulled up for a reason. We might can flip, let's see how much more of the weather bell. Sometimes these weather model subscriptions, Tropical Tidbits is free, by the way. Weather Bell costs about $30 a month. It's worth it in my opinion if you're a weather nerd. But I know even $30 to me is just a lot. But you know, I'm a weather nerd and I talk about weather, so it's definitely beneficial for me. But how far do we have on this one? Let's see. Yeah, I mean, this one only goes out 150 hours, so it doesn't even go out as far. We can kind of flip to this. And yeah, so this goes out a little bit further. So 174 hours next Friday morning, literally a week from today. It has a 1,002 millibar low, starting to move into the central to the western Caribbean. So we have a strengthening storm system. I'm going to try to flip back to this right after I'm going over all model guidance here so we can get a new version of this. But it kind of tears my nerves up. I don't have any more. I knew that was going to happen, but it is what it is. So let's go back and look at the icon, all right? So icon model, the icon really likes this system trying to develop here in the Western Caribbean. For example, you know all the unsettled weather I've been kind of mentioning in Louisiana, Texas right now. I mean, it's Friday morning. This is Monday morning, and you still sort of have a weak tropical disturbance tucked into the northwest Gulf of Mexico. That's something to watch. In fact, the icon really tries to get this going. And we're just going to go on and go about 120 hours out, which is as far out as we can go on the 06Z icon. Has the weak disturbance in the Eastern Caribbean, just 1,008 millibar low, very weak. And then it has this system right here that you want to throw a bone to. I'm telling you, we got to watch this. I would not be surprised if the National Hurricane Center dubbed this an area of interest in the next update or two. It's just something we need to watch. If we do go back and look at the OOZ icon from overnight, it has it stronger a little bit further west as far as this system right here, and we'll take it about a week out. The icon continues. This is the wild thing, and you got two things going on here. The first thing's the most interesting thing to me, in my opinion, is it keeps this energy in the Gulf of Mexico for another week. And you continue just to have these plumes of tropical moisture, the Texas and Louisiana coastline. And then at the same time, that finally moves inland, but you put your eyes down here into the Caribbean and you have almost a major hurricane based off the icon a week from today in the Caribbean. Now, I would agree if you're thinking, what's the point of looking at the icon? It's not a very good model when it comes to this stuff. Well, if you go back and remember Beryl, when Beryl was kind of right over the Yucatan, a lot of model guidance had this going further north. And a lot of model guys had this going into Mexico and the extreme southern coastline of Texas. Well, Beryl, kept being consistent with this turning north. Now, it did not end up going as far north as what the icon said with Beryl, but it ended up leaning towards the icon model. So I don't think the icon is completely off its rocks here at all. I think that it's a decent model to look at when you're comparing it with other model guidance. Now, the Canadian has kind of just totally lost this storm. We start off Monday morning, Labor Day morning, and you keep going, and there's just nothing. Nothing out there. So, of course, that would be the best case scenario. The Canadian just flat out does not develop anything out here. Now, let's go back and see if we can catch a little bit more of the GFS. It still only goes out to 174 hours out. But there it is. You got a strengthening storm system right here. See that millibar dropping just in that 24-hour period. It kind of goes from like hardly nothing to all of a sudden it's a tropical storm Francine. Same thing. It's tearing my nerves up. I can't show you this, guys. It really is. We can go a little bit further out here. And we can go about a week out. And let's be realistic. A week out is about as far out as we need to go. Anything past that is just, I love to use this term. You guys are going to laugh, but I call it a fart in the wind. That's all it is. I mean, you can just take a shot and, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. That's why I don't, do seasonal forecasts, because I think they're all just bogus. But you go literally a week out from right now, and this has a 999 millibar Tropical Storm Francine strengthening coming out the central Caribbean, starting to move into the northwestern sections of the Caribbean. And of course, the stronger this storm gets right here, the more it's going to start to notch somewhat north. So I'm going to try to remember to kind of go back to this right at the end of this update on the tropics, because I do want to show you a little bit further out, just to kind of show you a scenario where if this does strengthen the Caribbean, it's going to try to turn north. That's the main reason I want to show you. Now let's look at the European ensemble guidance. And once again, this morning, guys, my chair has the case of the squeaks. Thought I got rid of it, but it is rearing its ugly sound this morning. So if you hear any squeaks in the background, it's just my chair. But let's start it off for Sunday morning. So remember the European ensemble, the EPS, OOZ from overnight, it makes up 51 members. So if all 51 members form as it tries to latch onto a low pressure, it'll show every single L on the screen if it's strong enough. If it only shows 28 out of 51 of them, it's going to show 28 of them. In this case, it just shows all the members on your screen. It does not mean you're going to get 28 hurricanes. It just, it's showing different members on one output for us. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, ask some questions. I'll try to answer them. But this is our main wave we are watching here. You're going to see a lot of other L's behind this form too. And if you look right here, we got some L's popping up in the northwest Gulf of Mexico. It tells me that, hey, it does like the idea of a couple members trying to develop in a weak tropical system trying to form in the northwest Gulf. But we keep this going, see all those members forming down there in the Eastern Caribbean, and then look at the wave right behind it, and then the wave behind that one. My face might be in the way a little bit, but either way, we keep going here. We got at least half the members cruising through the Caribbean, so pretty solid confidence. There's solid confidence on this wave and the wave behind it. And we get, let's just take it to about a week out from right now. This is literally a week out from right now, next Friday morning. And we have some pretty strong members on this area of interest. We have some pretty strong members also with the area of interest behind this. And then this wave behind us is something to watch too. And, if we extend this past day 7, watch how the stronger members right here, and this is hard to see, so I'm actually going to try to zoom into this a little bit for you guys. But if you look right here, some of these stronger members like this 964 millibar hurricane, 953, which we don't want to see cruising through the Bahamas and areas of Florida, they begin to turn. Some of the weaker members don't, but that's not always the case. For example, you got some really strong members down here that are just slower, and they're just taking a little bit longer to turn. So that's a big difference between all this also too, guys, is some of the members are really slow, some of them are fast with this. Does it depend on strength? Yeah, it does. There's a lot of variables out there, but it just tells us that we got a lot to figure out with this. So there's like 3 distinct signals here. 2 of them have an area of interest on it. You can count the Gulf of Mexico one too if you want, but no area of interest on that. So we'll continue to watch this, guys. Some pretty wild stuff. Just because it's tough to figure out, it really is. But as far as what could promote this to really get going, well, we're not going to stay long on this, but sea surface temperatures, this is in Celsius, 30, 31, 32 degrees Celsius. When you turn that into Fahrenheit, that's the mid to upper 80s, okay? So we know the waters out here in the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, bathtub waters, all right? We know that really warm waters of the ocean, surface of the ocean, tropical systems love it. It basically gives it that warm, moist feed into these systems, helps it to create a very moist atmosphere. But just because you have warm sea surface temperatures, that doesn't mean that you're going to get a major hurricane immediately. The next thing you would look at is the upper wind pattern. Okay, now this is a little bit more complex, and we don't know a whole lot about this. But what we do know is, I do think the environment will be conducive for tropical development in the shorter term. This is around this coming Tuesday afternoon. Our tropical system, whatever it may be, a wave, depression, a named storm, is probably going to be somewhere into here. And, conditions are okay. Air is being dispersed out away from this area. But, how good is the structure? We're not sure. And what you're looking at here is winds at 200 millibars, about 40,000 feet up in the air. So the Euro, remember, keeps this pretty weak. And in fact, we're going to just go on and flip this back to the latest GFS. Okay, and because it shows the L more on the screen. So we keep going. Doesn't really develop anything. And then finally it does right here. It takes all the way to the central Caribbean, south of Jamaica, before it starts to develop. This is around this coming Thursday evening. September the 5th. Just think of it like that. Don't worry about mornings, evenings, and afternoons and all that. We're starting to get an environment that could support more development. And it's because, in the northern hemisphere, low pressure rotates like this, right? Okay, we get this back off. But if you look right here, we get, we're getting some air in the upper levels of the atmosphere, sort of getting dispersed away from the system. Now it gets a little weird right here. But here, getting pushed out, air getting pushed out right here, air getting pushed out over here. So air in the upper levels is being forced out away from this low to mid-level circulation. This allows for more air to rise. That gets pushed away, more air rises. Rising air allows for more shower and storm development. More shower and storm development creates a very moist atmosphere and just environment for these tropical systems. Therefore, if they have a moist environment, no dry air is getting in, they can improve their structure. If they can improve their structure, then you can get some sort of rapid intensification at some point. It's like a multi-step process. And, if you go back and look at Debbie was never able to really take advantage of those warm waters of the Northeast Gulf of Mexico because it never could improve its schedule because it got hit by dry air on its western side. So, if a certain piece does not come together, then it's going to struggle somewhat. It's going to be kind of have a limiter put on it, which we always hope for, right? And the atmosphere only improves. So as it gets right into here, air is being dispersed out away from the system, and we now can go about all the way out to about 8 days from now. And it has a 987 millibar strong tropical storm, low in Category 1 hurricane right here in the Western Caribbean with a nice environment. Air being pushed out. If you look really close, you see these lines with the arrowheads kind of embedded into these lines. You got a nice anticyclonic flow. Gets a little bit weird right here. Might have a little bit of shear on the northwest side of the storm. But, you can talk about all that until the cows come home, but it's too far out to really get too specific. And I always say that, and I get very specific. But the reason I do get specific on 7-8 days out is because it's more of an educational thing, not as if that's exactly what's going to happen. I hope that makes sense. So, excellent environment. Most model guidance shows the environment getting much better for tropical development once this gets more so in the central to western Caribbean. The eastern Caribbean, I don't know if it's bad. It's just more so that it's a weaker tropical system. It takes a while to get going. So we get this back off, and we can go actually if we kind of go back to the GFS and we look at this, yeah, sure enough, that's exactly what happens. You get a strengthening tropical system, and now if we go all the way out to next Saturday evening, we have a Category 1 low in Category 2 hurricane in the Western Caribbean. And look how it's beginning to turn a little bit north because it's gaining strength. A strengthening tropical system always wants to gain latitude, basically means it wants to fight to go north. So, yeah, and as far as, and let's look at the GFS here. It's a better example just because we have a stronger system that can indicate where the blues are on your screen here. Now the GFS, what about steering current? So our tropical system around this coming Tuesday morning is probably somewhere in here. On all model guidance, it's so weak it doesn't even show up as low pressure, which would show up in blue. But our tropical system is somewhere into here. Now you got the weak ridging indicated in the orange on your screen. Flow around this ridge is going like this. So this is forcing whatever is right here to go west or like this across the Caribbean. Okay, very weak ridging, but that weak ridging is definitely still going to push this more east to west. If you had, like, for example, a Category 1 or 2 hurricane or stronger, right here, then it is already going to start to turn. Even though there's a ridge here, it's very weak. It's not going to influence, I don't think, it much. I think it would start to turn, but we don't. It's a weaker system here. We think it's going to be. All model guidance shows that. But you keep on going, right? Ridge sort of strengthens a little bit, more so broadens on top of the system, and you're going to see a area blue pop up right there. You see, you got to put in your bifocals. It's right there, area blue popping up here. At the same time, you notice how all the orange disappears up here. You're not seeing the orange anymore. That doesn't mean that you don't have any ridging, but it's weak. So you no longer have a defined steering current that's really pushing this, east to west. you got two things going on here. You now have a weakness right here created by some sort of trough in the east, trough of low pressure. So a weakness, this means that this could easily turn northwest and eventually north if it wants to. You have a weakness there, and you also have a strengthening tropical system if we're going off the GFS. So that basically works in tandem for this to turn north pretty easily. And eventually that's exactly what it does. For example, you see how you start to see more and more blue here. This tells us we got a more and more strengthening tropical system. If you look at the last couple frames, now we got all the way out to what, 222 hours out, which is almost 10 days out. Watch how the last couple frames, it takes this area in blue and it begins to turn it north. That's because we have a wide open weakness up here. Okay, trough right here in the eastern US, which could on down the road definitely influence the steering of this tropical system. And this is starting to turn north. Okay, and you know what's north, right? The Gulf of Mexico. We don't want to see that. So a lot of things we got to watch, guys. A lot of things we got to watch. I will say this. You could still get a euro. I'm not, you know, guys, I don't hype just the worst case scenario up. You could get a euro situation where, sure, there's a weakness on top right here, right? You see the blue kind of come down, kind of erode the ridge, if you will, on top. But the euro keeps this so weak that it continues just to kind of cruise east to west. A weaker system is going to want to do that. So therefore, by the time it begins to strengthen, it doesn't really have time to turn north before it just kind of slams right into like Belize or the Yucatan Peninsula. Now, if you're tuning in from that area, that's not me saying you're going to get a tropical storm in 10 days. That's not me saying that. I'm just saying different scenarios, right? So I hope that makes sense, guys. I want to... Yesterday morning's video just went off, and I'm very, it's like I'm excited about it. I'm a little bummed because I just showed you guys basic information, but I'm hoping this video does well too, not just because I want massive growth on my YouTube, but because I want you guys to kind of understand all the variables out there and all that good stuff. So let's talk about what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Friday. I want to see what time it is because I got to make sure that I get out here fast enough. Got plenty of time, so we're good to go. So this is what's going on across the entire country for our Friday morning. We got this long area of shower and storm activity stretching from, like New Mexico all the way up into Canada and areas of Ontario. So nothing severe right now, just some showers and storms some folks are waking up to. We got this unsettled area of weather in like New York City, Long Island, the Tidewater area, and then we got this big plume of tropical moisture down along the Texas coastline and especially just about the entire Louisiana coastline. Big plumes of tropical moisture that continues to push in every few hours or so. So this is what's going on right now. Western U.S. pretty quiet. Watches, warnings, advisories, quiet. I mean, we got heat advisories, unfortunately, for you folks up here in the Pacific Northwest, which means it's probably going to be pretty dry too. We need some rain up here. Heat advisories in like St. Louis, heat advisories in the lower elevations of West Virginia, in a few counties, and Ohio and Kentucky. And we do have flood watches for southeast Louisiana. I'm very surprised they don't have them for like western and southwestern areas of Louisiana, but they know more than I do. Southern Mississippi, a few counties that have flood watches, and the rest of the country looks pretty quiet this morning. The excessive rainfall outlook, of course, with this kind of thin line of activity, we do have a marginal risk, but the really only big area to watch for flash flooding today is in that slight risk down here in Louisiana and a very small section of southeast Texas. That means we do have a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being met within 25 miles in any given location. Now, if we look at the Storm Prediction Center, marginal risk in the areas of the Carolinas, northeast Georgia, and then southwestern Virginia. Some of these storms could pack a punch today, some gusty winds, maybe even some hail. And then we got a marginal risk for areas of the Midwest into the Ohio Valley, and even a slight risk up for eastern sections of lower Michigan, including Detroit, points north, bordering the Lake Huron shoreline. So just be aware these storms could pack more of a punch up here than anywhere. Tornado risk, there is a 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. The wind threat, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And the hail threat, just a 5% risk, where there is a hail threat today. The southeast today, quiet start from most of the southeast except Louisiana. And we'll kind of zoom in and talk about Louisiana once we get to the south central time stamp. So if you're tuning in from Louisiana, just wait, and I got you covered on the south central time stamp. But the rest of the southeast today, Pop-up activity in northern areas of Mississippi, Tennessee. I think the further you get into eastern Tennessee, eastern Kentucky, the mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina, northeast Georgia, etc., up here to southwestern VA, I think you have a chance for stronger to severe storms. But watch out for some storms also in eastern sections of North Carolina. Just kind of dance around, and by the time we get into the overnight hours into tomorrow morning, looks like it's pretty quiet. Florida, same story, just some isolated pop-up activity. But this morning it's quiet, and I'll just kind of zoom into the Apps region, surrounding states. If you're vacationing in the mountains, Asheville points west, some storms are possible, even up to Boone, Banner Elk, storms possible in the Cumberland Plateau. Some of these could just pop up, sort of hang out around the same area, so don't be surprised you get some flash flooding. Very humid air mass still in place across this entire region. It's been awfully humid here, at least here in South Carolina this week. But the entire southern Apps region, definitely widespread showers and storms. You get west and east of those areas, a little bit less coverage, but still there. They'll just kind of bend and twist around. Raleigh could get some storms today, this evening. And, we get into tomorrow morning and it calms down a little bit. The Northeast, it's unsettled this morning along the Tidewater up to New York City, Long Island. We could continue just to deal with some on and off showers today, even into Connecticut. Some storms in the Tidewater again could refire. We continue to move into this evening. Not a whole lot going on. We'll talk about Michigan here in a second when we get to the north central timestamp. We'll get this area of unsettled weather that cruises through a good chunk of Quebec. Ontario into Quebec. So southern Ontario, you'll get some storms later this evening, and this will cruise on through, move through Toronto, and then eventually you get into the wee hours of the morning. You could be dealing with some showers, some scattered downpours across the Tug Hill Plateau, the Adirondacks, and all those areas, and wake up to some showers tomorrow across New England. Not a huge deal, though. South Central U.S., the big storyline weather-wise is the storms that could fire up in northwestern Texas through central Oklahoma, central Missouri, all the way up into Illinois, and then down here along the Gulf coastline, a lot of shower and storm and tropical activity, I would more so say. And then we'll turn around and do it again tomorrow. These storms across this area that I kind of went through pretty fast, and I don't think these will be a big deal, just some typical late summer type storms. But you get a little bit closer to my friends here in eastern Texas and Louisiana. Plumes of tropical moisture really confined to especially southern Louisiana, and I think this is more so why they have those flood watches. You see this big push of tropical moisture, so much moisture in the atmosphere as will be squeezing out every bit of rain in some of these storms and stuff like that. So early this afternoon, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, surrounding areas just drenched by lunchtime today, a little bit after. And some of this activity could make it all the way up to Jackson, Alexandria, Shreveport. Just don't think it'll be as widespread. But a lot of rain could fall, and then we'll turn around and we'll do it again tomorrow. A lot of rain could fall just between now and the next 24 hours, folks. Along the coastal kind of Louisiana, Texas line here, obviously in the most southern areas, 5-6 inches of rain is possible. A few inches of rain in southeast Louisiana, even a lot of rain along the Mississippi coastline. But you go on and take this out. Let's just go all the way through the entire weekend, all the way through Sunday evening. Just a nasty last weekend of August. Definitely just going to be soaked all weekend. So any football games being played down here, messy weather. I think LSU and USC play, but I don't think they play a home-and-home series. I should know that, but I don't. I think they play in a neutral site. But anyways, you don't have to worry about it there. But we move into the north-central U.S. The only active weather would be, I would say, from Illinois to Indiana to lower Michigan, maybe sections of like northwestern Ohio. But we get into this afternoon, you see this kind of this line of storms kind of cruising through this region. And I think if anywhere these storms are going to pack a higher punch, it's going to be sort of in southeastern lower Michigan. As you can tell, these storms really get going around 4 to 5, 6 p.m. this afternoon. Storms possible. Also possible like in western Illinois. You see these storms down here. Storms in northern Indiana. Southern lower Michigan into eventually like Detroit. So just be aware of these storms this afternoon to this evening. They'll kind of cruise through, then cruise on out. And then we'll be done with it. Now, we could get another push of storms into northern Indiana northwestern Ohio. These can make it all the way up to Detroit, but I don't think they'll pack as much of a punch as what the storms will be this afternoon. And you look at the updraft Ulysses swath in this area, it doesn't look too concerning. There is a 2% risk here in this area right here. But, wind threats, let's look at it here. Wind gust swath. It does show an area that is highlighted for that 15% risk of damaging winds right into southeast Michigan. It does show it for northern Indiana also, and also central sections of Illinois, even areas of northwestern Ohio. Some 30, 40, 45 mile per hour wind gusts are possible with this. It's nothing to be concerned about. I know I have a loyal viewer that lives in Michigan, and she has definitely big time storm anxiety based off the comments, and I know we all come together and pray for her, but I wouldn't be too concerned today. Definitely no tornado outbreak or anything like that, but definitely praying for your anxiety. And anybody's, some people just a regular good old summer thunderstorm, scares them to death. And, I get it. I do. The western U.S., it's quiet weather out there, folks. The only area I could see some scattered out activity in is Arizona and New Mexico. Just some isolated pop-up activity, as you can tell down here. Not a big deal at all. Yeah, if anything, it's beneficial for you guys to get some rain. So temperatures, folks, kind of cloudy, rainy, cooled air in the northeast. Once you get away from that, you warm on up to the 80s, even some 90s. Hot day in the Ohio Valley areas of the Midwest, 90s. Hot in the Mid-South, the Southeast, very warm. Now, once you start to get into the northern tier of the country, just nice and warm. Nothing too crazy one way or the other. Even down to Oklahoma and Texas, it'll be humid, but the actual air temperatures, 80s and 90s, that's nothing compared to what you've dealt with all summer. And then the western U.S., it's warming on up, pretty warm, above average for a lot of areas, but I would say nothing historic or terrible out here. So, I will say, just to round this video off, because this kind of shocked me when I saw it yesterday. They issued this yesterday afternoon around 4 p.m. August 29th, the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. Unfortunately for my friends out west, high confidence above average temperatures for between the 4th and the 8th of September. But pretty decent confidence of below average temperatures across a lot of the east and even the central U.S. And I live in South Carolina, so I'm absolutely loving seeing this, if I'm being biased, of course. But this is interesting, and what's even more interesting is through the 6th through the 12th, they're still going for below average temperatures across the eastern U.S. It's just pretty wild stuff, guys. And you're asking, well, how cool? Well, we're not quite sure, but I would say next week's setup is more so driven off lower high temperatures, if that makes sense. So I think, for example, if you live in the southeast, maybe you're going to get a lot of days in the upper 70s, but lows maybe only in the upper 50s, in the 60s. I don't think you're going to get highs in the 70s and then lows in the low 50s, upper 40s, like very far south. This might be a different story if you live in the Ohio Valley Northeast, obviously, but I don't think next week's cool down for areas of the South and even like Mid-Atlantic is that first real brisk fall cold front. I think we might have that a little bit further out, but confidence is there that we're going to have consistent troughing over the eastern U.S. Troughing meaning the opportunity for frequent cold fronts. So it's nice to see this in September, because to me, even though I live in South Carolina, it's still hotter in Hades in September. I still always consider September 1st the beginning of fall, in my opinion. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. I should have a video tonight. I should, unless something comes up. But you guys have a wonderful day, great beginning to your weekend, and I'll talk to you again soon.